Some losses stay with you so long, you forget what it felt like to hope. Claire Morrow had carried that kind of emptiness for 23 years. At 62, she kept to herself in the mountains, content with solitude and the quiet rhythms of a life she'd built alone. So when a letter arrived saying she'd won a storage cabin from a charity raffle she barely remembered entering, she didn't expect much. Maybe some old furniture, maybe nothing at all. She drove up on a cold October morning with a rusty key and low expectations. But the moment she opened that cabin door, everything shifted. Buried under years of dust and forgotten belongings were things that stopped her heart. Letters, a child's drawings, a box marked for Mom. Could this abandoned place really hold the answers to the family she thought she'd lost forever? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The White Mountains had been Claire Morrow's refuge for the better part of 15 years. Not the kind of refuge people imagine when they think about mountain living. No romantic notions of finding oneself or getting back to nature. It was simpler than that, and harder too. The mountains didn't ask questions. They didn't expect explanations. They just were, and that suited Claire fine. Her cabin sat on 3 acres of sloping land, tucked between stands of white pine and hemlock. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that barely fit one person, a living room dominated by a stone fireplace she'd learned to maintain herself. The roof leaked in 2 places when the snow got heavy, and the front porch sagged on the north corner. But it was hers, paid off with the last of her late husband's life insurance and her teacher's pension. Nobody could take it from her, and nobody tried to visit uninvited. Most mornings, Claire woke before dawn. Not because she had to, but because the habit had settled into her bones over the years. She'd make coffee in the old percolator on the stove, none of those fancy pod machines that Martin kept trying to. Sell her down at the general store, and sit at the kitchen table while darkness gave way to grey light. The view from her window showed the same thing every morning. The slope of the mountain rising behind her property, the tree line thick and unbroken, occasionally a deer or two picking their way through the underbrush. She liked the sameness of it. At 62, she'd earned the right to a life without surprises. Her daily routine rarely varied. After coffee, she'd dress in layers. Even in October, the mornings carried a bite, and take her walk. 3 miles up the old logging road, then back down. The exercise kept her strong, kept her mind clear. She'd learned long ago that an idle mind was a dangerous thing, prone to wandering into territories better left alone. By mid-morning, she'd be back home, fixing a simple breakfast. Oatmeal usually, with whatever fruit she had on hand. Then she'd spend the rest of the day on small tasks. Splitting wood for the winter, mending a fence post, reading one of the worn paperbacks from the boxes in her spare room. She'd been a voracious reader once, back when she taught high school English. Now she mostly reread the same books, finding comfort in stories she already knew the endings to. Martin was the only person who checked on her regularly. He ran the general store 5 miles down the mountain, a weathered building that sold everything from canned goods to fishing tackle. Martin was in his 70s, a widower himself, and he understood the value of leaving people alone while still keeping an eye on them. "You get that leak fixed yet?" he'd ask when she came in for supplies, his tone gruff, but his eyes kind. "Working on it," she'd reply, and they'd both know she probably wasn't. He never asked about her past, never pried into why a woman with a teaching degree and a sharp mind chose to live like a hermit on a mountain. That was the thing about people who'd lived long enough. They understood that everyone carried something, and sometimes the kindest thing you could do was not make them explain it. The truth was, Claire had built her life around not explaining things, not to herself, and certainly not to anyone else. She'd been 19 when she got pregnant. 19 and stupid, in love with a boy who disappeared the moment she told him. Her parents, strict, religious people who'd raised her with firm hands and firmer expectations, had been clear about their position. She'd made her bed, as her mother put it, and she'd have to lie in it. Alone. No help, no support, no forgiveness. She'd given birth to a daughter in a county hospital, held her for 3 hours, and signed the adoption papers with hands that shook so badly she could barely write her name. The social worker had been kind, professional, explaining that the adoptive family was wonderful, stable, loving, everything a child deserved. Everything Claire couldn't provide. The baby's name was Hannah. Claire had been allowed to name her, though she knew the adoptive parents would probably change it. She'd chosen it because it meant grace. And if there was one thing that little girl would need in this world, it was grace. Grace to forgive the mother who couldn't keep her. Grace to build a life without the weight of abandonment crushing her. Grace to be happy. For 23 years, Claire had told herself that giving Hannah up was the right choice, the only choice. She'd been a teenager with no money, no family support, no way to raise a child properly. The adoptive family could give Hannah everything, a real home, 2 parents, opportunities, love. But the wondering never stopped. She'd tried once to find Hannah. When her daughter turned 18, Claire had hired a private investigator, spent money she didn't really have, to track her down. The investigator had been efficient, finding an address within 2 weeks. Claire had driven 4 hours to a neat, suburban house with a minivan in the driveway and flower boxes under the windows. She'd knocked on the door, waited, knocked again. When Hannah answered, Claire had known her immediately. Same eyes, same shape to her face. Even the way she stood, weight on one hip, arms crossed, was familiar in a way that made Claire's chest ache. "Can I help you?" Hannah had asked, polite but puzzled. Claire had rehearsed a speech, had practiced it 100 times in her car on the drive over, but standing there, looking at the daughter she'd given away, all the words had evaporated. "I'm Claire," she'd managed. "I'm your birth mother." The change in Hannah's expression had been immediate. The politeness dropped away, replaced by something hard and cold. "I don't want anything to do with you," Hannah had said, each word precise and cutting. "My mother, my real mother, told me you might show up someday. She warned me. You gave me up. You don't get to come back now and pretend you care." The door had closed. Not slammed. That might have been better somehow. Just closed, firmly. And finally, with a soft click that felt like the end of everything. Claire had stood on that porch for 5 minutes, maybe longer. Then she'd walked back to her car and driven home. She'd never tried again. That had been 23 years ago, when Claire was 39 and Hannah was 18. Claire had been married then to a good man named Robert, who'd known about Hannah and never judged her for it. Robert had held her that night while she cried, and in the morning he'd simply said, "Some doors close. That doesn't mean you stop being her mother." But Robert was gone now too. Heart attack, sudden and brutal, 15 years ago. Claire had sold their house in town, too many memories, too many rooms that echoed with absence, and bought this place in the mountains. Started over. Again. Teaching had gotten harder after Robert died. Standing in front of classrooms full of teenagers, trying to make them care about Shakespeare and Faulkner, felt impossible when she could barely care about getting out of bed. She'd retired early, took the reduced pension, and disappeared into the woods. The mountains asked nothing of her, expected nothing. And slowly, over years, Claire had built something that resembled peace. Not happiness. She'd stopped hoping for that, but a kind of acceptance. This was her life. Solitary, quiet, small. It would do. She kept a journal from her teaching days in a drawer in her bedroom. Black leather, worn at the corners, pages filled with lesson plans and notes about students. Sometimes she'd take it out and flip through it, reading her own handwriting from years ago. Back when she'd thought she could make a difference. Back when she'd believed that caring about something was worth the inevitable pain of losing it. The last entry was from the week before she'd retired. Just one line: "I'm tired of pretending I'm not empty." She hadn't written in it since. 6 months ago, Claire had done something impulsive. She'd gone to the county fair, something she never did because Martin had insisted. "You need to get off that mountain once in a while," he'd said. "Come down. Walk around. Remember what people look like." So she'd gone, wandered through the craft booths and the livestock exhibitions, feeling out of place among the families and couples. She'd been about to leave when she'd passed a booth for the county hospital's charity fundraiser. A woman with a kind face had been selling raffle tickets. $5, the woman had said. "All proceeds go to the children's wing. Grand prize is a storage cabin up in the White Mountains. Not fancy, but it's got good bones." Claire had bought a ticket. She couldn't have said why exactly. Maybe because the woman reminded her a little of Robert's mother. Maybe because $5 was a small price to pay to feel like she'd done something good. Maybe because some part of her, buried deep, still be. Some losses stay with you so long, you forget what it felt like to hope. Claire Morrow had carried that kind of emptiness for 23 years. At 62, she kept to herself in the mountains, content with solitude and the quiet rhythms of a life she'd built alone. So when a letter arrived saying she'd won a storage cabin from a charity raffle she barely remembered entering, she didn't expect much. Maybe some old furniture, maybe nothing at all. She drove up on a cold October morning with a rusty key and low expectations. But the moment she opened that cabin door, everything shifted. Buried under years of dust and forgotten belongings were things that stopped her heart. Letters, a child's drawings, a box marked for Mom. Could this abandoned place really hold the answers to the family she thought she'd lost forever? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The White Mountains had been Claire Morrow's refuge for the better part of 15 years. Not the kind of refuge people imagine when they think about mountain living. No romantic notions of finding oneself or getting back to nature. It was simpler than that, and harder too. The mountains didn't ask questions. They didn't expect explanations. They just were. And that suited Claire fine. Her cabin sat on 3 acres of sloping land, tucked between stands of white pine and hemlock. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that barely fit one person, a living room dominated by a stone fireplace she'd learned to maintain herself. The roof leaked in 2 places when the snow got heavy, and the front porch sagged on the north corner. But it was hers, paid off, with the last of her late husband's life insurance and her teacher's pension. Nobody could take it from her, and nobody tried to visit uninvited. Most mornings, Claire woke before dawn. Not because she had to, but because the habit had settled into her bones over the years. She'd make coffee in the old percolator on the stove, none of those fancy pod machines, that Martin kept trying to sell her down at the general store, and sit at the kitchen table while darkness gave way to grey light. The view from her window showed the same thing every morning, the slope of the mountain rising behind her property, the tree line thick and unbroken, occasionally a deer or two picking their way through the underbrush. She liked the sameness of it. At 62, she'd earned the right to a life without surprises. Her daily routine rarely varied. After coffee, she'd dress in layers. Even in October, the mornings carried a bite, and take her walk. 3 miles up the old logging road, then back down. The exercise kept her strong, kept her mind clear. She'd learned long ago that an idle mind was a dangerous thing, prone to wandering into territories better left alone. By mid-morning, she'd be back home, fixing a simple breakfast. Oatmeal, usually, with whatever fruit she had on hand. Then she'd spend the rest of the day on small tasks, splitting wood for the winter, mending a fence post, reading one of the worn paperbacks from the boxes in her spare room. She'd been a voracious reader once, back when she taught high school English. Now she mostly reread the same books, finding comfort in stories she already knew the endings to. Martin was the only person who checked on her regularly. He ran the general store 5 miles down the mountain, a weathered building that sold everything from canned goods to fishing tackle. Martin was in his 70s, a widower himself, and he understood the value of leaving people alone while still keeping an eye on them. "You get that leak fixed yet?" He'd ask when she came in for supplies. his tone gruff but his eyes kind. "Working on it," she'd reply, and they'd both know she probably wasn't. He never asked about her past, never pried into why a woman with a teaching degree and a sharp mind chose to live like a hermit on a mountain. That was the thing about people who'd lived long enough. They understood that everyone carried something, and sometimes the kindest thing you could do was not make them explain it. The truth was, Claire had built her life around not explaining things. Not to herself, and certainly not to anyone else. She'd been 19 when she got pregnant. 19 and stupid, in love with a boy who disappeared the moment she told him. Her parents, strict, religious people who'd raised her with firm hands and firmer expectations, had been clear about their position. She'd made her bed, as her mother put it, and she'd have to lie in it alone, no help, no support, no forgiveness. She'd given birth to a daughter in a county hospital, held her for 3 hours, and signed the adoption papers with hands that shook so badly she could barely write her name. The social worker had been kind, professional, explaining that the adoptive family was wonderful, stable, loving, everything a child deserved. Everything Claire couldn't provide. The baby's name was Hannah. Claire had been allowed to name her, though she knew the adoptive parents would probably change it. She'd chosen it because it meant grace, and if there was one thing that little girl would need in this world, it was grace. Grace to forgive the mother who couldn't keep her. Grace to build a life without the weight of abandonment crushing her. Grace to be happy. For 23 years, Claire had told herself that giving Hannah up was the right choice. The only choice. She'd been a teenager with no money, no family support, no way to raise a child properly. The adoptive family could give Hannah everything. A real home, 2 parents, opportunities, love. But the wondering never stopped. She'd tried once to find Hannah. When her daughter turned 18, Claire had hired a private investigator, spent money she didn't really have, to track her down. The investigator had been efficient, finding an address within 2 weeks. Claire had driven 4 hours to a neat suburban house with a minivan in the driveway and flower boxes under the windows. She'd knocked on the door, waited, knocked again. When Hannah answered, Claire had known her immediately. Same eyes, same shape to her face. Even the way she stood, weight on one hip, arms crossed, was familiar in a way that made Claire's chest ache. "Can I help you?" Hannah had asked, polite but puzzled. Claire had rehearsed a speech, had practiced it 100 times in her car on the drive over. But standing there, looking at the daughter she'd given away, all the words had evaporated. "I'm Claire," she'd managed. "I'm your birth mother." The change in Hannah's expression had been immediate. The politeness dropped away, replaced by something hard and cold. "I don't want anything to do with you," Hannah had said, each word precise and cutting. "My mother, my real mother, told me you might show up someday. She warned me. You gave me up. You don't get to come back now and pretend you care." The door had closed. Not slammed, that might have been better somehow. Just closed, firmly and finally, with a soft click that felt like the end of everything. Claire had stood on that porch for 5 minutes, maybe longer. Then she'd walked back to her car and driven home. She'd never tried again. That had been 23 years ago, when Claire was 39 and Hannah was 18. Claire had been married then, to a good man named Robert, who'd known about Hannah and never judged her for it. Robert had held her that night while she cried, and in the morning he'd simply said, "Some doors close." That doesn't mean you stop being her mother. But Robert was gone now too. Heart attack, sudden and brutal, 15 years ago. Claire had sold their house in town, too many memories, too many rooms that echoed with absence, and bought this place in the mountains. Started over, again. Teaching had gotten harder after Robert died. Standing in front of classrooms full of teenagers, trying to make them care about Shakespeare and Faulkner, felt impossible when she could barely care about getting out of bed. She'd retired early, took the reduced pension, and disappeared into the woods. The mountains asked nothing of her, expected nothing, and slowly, over years, Claire had built something that resembled peace. Not happiness, she'd stopped hoping for that, but a kind of acceptance. This was her life. Solitary, quiet, small. It would do. She kept a journal from her teaching days in a drawer in her bedroom. Black leather, worn at the corners. Pages filled with lesson plans and notes about students. Sometimes she'd take it out and flip through it, reading her own handwriting from years ago. Back when she'd thought she could make a difference. Back when she'd believed that caring about something was worth the inevitable pain of losing it. The last entry was from the week before she'd retired. Just one line, "I'm tired of pretending I'm not empty." She hadn't written in it since. 6 months ago, Claire had done something impulsive. She'd gone to the county fair, something she never did, because Martin had insisted. "You need to get off that mountain once in a while," he'd said. "Come down. Walk around. Remember what people look like." So she'd gone, wandered through the craft booths and the livestock exhibitions, feeling out of place among the families and couples. She'd been about to leave when she'd passed a booth for the county hospital's charity fundraiser. A woman with a kind face had been selling raffle tickets. $5, the woman had said. "All proceeds go to the children's wing. Grand prize is a storage cabin up in the White Mountains. Not fancy, but it's got good bones." Claire had bought a ticket. She couldn't have said why exactly. Maybe because the woman reminded her a little of Robert's mother. Maybe because $5 was a small price to pay to feel like she'd done something good. Maybe because some part of her, buried deep, still believed in the possibility of luck. She'd stuck the ticket stub in her wallet and forgotten about it until 3 weeks ago when the letter arrived. Official letterhead from the county hospital congratulating her on winning the raffle. Included was a deed to a storage cabin at an address she didn't recognize, along with a key and directions. Claire had sat at her kitchen table, staring at the letter, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not quite hope, she knew better than that, but curiosity maybe, or just a break in the monotony. She'd driven up there on a cold October morning, the kind where your breath steams and the sun struggles to break through the clouds. The directions led her deeper into the mountains, onto roads that got progressively rougher, until finally she'd arrived at a clearing with a small, dilapidated structure that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. The cabin was maybe 20 by 20 feet, with a sagging roof and windows so dirty they were nearly opaque. The wood siding was weathered grey, and the whole place leaned slightly to one side, as if exhausted by the weight of time. Claire had sat in her truck for a long moment, engine idling, wondering what she'd expected. This was what you got from a $5 raffle ticket. Not treasure, just someone else's abandoned problem. She'd turned off the truck and climbed out. The air was sharp with pine and the promise of winter. Her boots crunched on the gravel as she approached the door, the rusty key heavy in her hand. The lock was stiff, reluctant. She'd had to work it back and forth, jiggling the key. Before something inside gave way, with a reluctant click, the door swung open on hinges that screamed in protest, and everything changed. The smell hit her first. Musty and thick, the scent of closed spaces and forgotten things. Claire stepped inside, letting her eyes adjust to the dimness. Weak light filtered through the dirty windows, creating columns of dust motes that hung suspended in the air like ghosts. The cabin was packed. Furniture covered with old sheets formed shapeless lumps along the walls. Boxes were stacked nearly to the ceiling in places, some of them sagging under their own weight. A dresser, a rocking chair, what looked like it might be a small dining table beneath a tarp. Someone had used this place as storage, cramming in a lifetime of possessions and then walking away. Claire moved deeper into the space, her footsteps hollow on the wooden floor. She pulled the sheet off the nearest piece of furniture. A bookshelf, mostly empty, except for a few paperbacks with cracked spines and faded covers. Romance novels from the 90s. A water-damaged copy of a cookbook. Nothing of obvious value. She opened the first box she could reach. Dishes wrapped in newspaper. The dates on the paper were from 3 years ago. She moved to another box, linens yellowed with age and smelling of mothballs. A third box held Christmas decorations, the kind of ceramic figurines people collected and then ran out of space to display. This was going to take forever to sort through. Claire felt a wave of exhaustion at the prospect. She could sell the cabin as is, contents included, and let someone else deal with it. Take whatever modest profit there was and go home. Forget she'd ever won this raffle, but something kept her there. Maybe it was just stubbornness. She'd driven 2 hours after all. Maybe it was the lack of anything better to do. She kept opening boxes, sorting through the accumulated debris of someone else's life. It was in the 5th or 6th box that she found the photo album, leather-bound. The kind that had been popular in the 80s, with plastic sleeves protecting the photos inside. Claire pulled it out and flipped it open randomly. A family at a beach, a birthday party with a cake shaped like a carousel, a Christmas morning, wrapping paper scattered across a living room floor. None of the faces were familiar, just snapshots of ordinary happiness, frozen in time. She was about to close it when something made her look more carefully at one of the photos. A graduation picture, high school by the look of the cap and gown. The girl in the photo was maybe 17 or 18, dark-haired, smiling at the camera with an expression that was equal parts pride and nervousness. Claire's breath caught. The eyes, the shape of the face, the way the girl held her shoulders just slightly hunched, as if trying to take up less space in the world. Claire knew that posture. She saw it in the mirror every morning. With shaking hands, she flipped through more pages. The girl appeared in dozens of photos, aging from childhood through adolescence, playing in a sprinkler, sitting on Santa's lap, holding a science fair trophy, always with the same couple, a man and a woman who had to be her parents. The woman was small and compact, with kind eyes and graying hair. The man was taller, broad-shouldered, with the weathered look of someone who worked outdoors. None of the photos included Claire, but the girl in them, she could have been Claire at that age. The resemblance was unmistakable. Claire set the album down carefully, as if it might shatter. Her heart was pounding. This had to be a coincidence. People could look alike without being related. The world was full of similar faces, but her hands moved of their own accord, reaching for another box. This one was filled with file folders and loose papers. She pulled them out carefully, spreading them across the dusty floor. Bills, medical records, tax documents, and then tied with a faded ribbon, a bundle of letters. The top envelope was addressed in careful handwriting, to Mom. Claire's hands went numb. She untied the ribbon with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. The first letter was dated 15 years ago. The paper was nice, not expensive, but the kind someone chose when they wanted their words to matter. She unfolded it. Dear Mom, I know I don't say it enough, but thank you for everything. Starting nursing school was terrifying, and I don't think I could have done it without your support. You've always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. I hope I can make you proud. Love always, Hannah. The name hit Claire like a physical blow. Hannah, her Hannah. The baby she'd given up. The daughter who'd slammed a door in her face 23 years ago. These letters were Hannah's. This cabin had belonged to Hannah's adoptive mother. Claire's vision blurred. She blinked rapidly, trying to focus, trying to make sense of what she was looking at. Her hands shuffled through more letters. There were dozens of them, spanning years. Hannah writing about graduating nursing school. Hannah describing her first job at a hospital. Hannah excited about meeting someone named David. Hannah's wedding announcement. Each letter a window into a life Claire had never been allowed to witness. The letters grew more personal as they progressed. Hannah writing about struggles with David, about feeling like she wasn't good enough, about doubts and fears she clearly trusted her mother with. The adoptive mother, a woman who'd given Hannah everything Claire couldn't, had kept every letter, tied them carefully, preserved them like the treasures they were. Claire found herself reading faster, desperate to catch up on 23 years in a matter of minutes. The marriage to David seemed to fall apart gradually. Hannah's letters mentioned arguments, distance growing between them, feeling alone even when they were together. And then, 3 years ago, a letter that was both joyful and heartbroken. Mom, I'm pregnant. David left last week. Says he can't handle being a father, that he never wanted this. I'm scared, but I'm also happy. I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to be a mother. I just wish you were closer. I wish you could be here for this. The next letters were shorter, written in the scattered style of someone with a newborn. Brief updates about sleepless nights and first smiles. A baby girl named Lily. Hannah describing how motherhood was harder and more wonderful than she'd ever imagined. How she looked at Lily and understood for the first time what real love felt like. The last letter was dated 3 years ago, right after Lily's birth. Nothing after that. Claire shuffled through the remaining papers in the box, searching for an explanation. Had Hannah and her mother had a falling out? Had something happened? She found the answer in a folder marked Estate Documents. Inside was a death certificate for Louise Grant, dated 2 years ago. Cause of death: complications from pneumonia. Age 73, Louise Grant, Hannah's adoptive mother. The woman who'd raised Claire's daughter, who'd been there for every milestone Claire had missed. She was gone. Claire sat back on her heels, surrounded by the remnants of Louise's life, trying to process what this meant. The cabin had been part of Louise's estate. Somehow, through whatever bureaucratic mix-up or legal quirk, it had ended up in a charity raffle instead of going to Hannah. And Claire, through pure, impossible chance, had won it. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and opened the browser. Search for Hannah Reeves Nursing. The results came back immediately. A local news article from 6 months ago. Valley Regional Hospital Nurse wins Community Service Award. There was a photo. Hannah, 41 years old now, looking professional in scrubs. Her hair pulled back, her face showing the subtle line that came with age and responsibility. And next to her a child. 8 years old, if Claire's math was right. Lily. Dark curls and serious eyes, and a small smile that looked like it didn't come easily. The article was brief. Mentioned Hannah's dedication to her patients, her volunteer work with a literacy program, her commitment to raising her daughter as a single mother. It listed her workplace. Valley Regional Hospital, 90 miles away. Hannah was 90 miles away. After 23 years of distance that felt insurmountable, her daughter was 90 miles away, and Claire was sitting in a cabin full of letters holding proof that Hannah had built a good life, that she'd become the kind of person who wrote to her mother regularly, who cared deeply, who worked hard and loved her child, that Louise had done what Claire couldn't, raised Hannah to be someone wonderful. The weight of it was crushing. All those years of wondering, of guilt, of telling herself that giving Hannah up had been the right choice. Here was the evidence that she'd been right. Hannah had thrived without her, had a mother who'd loved her properly, consistently, had built a life that was full and meaningful. But now Louise was gone, and Hannah was raising Lily alone 90 miles away, with no idea that her birth mother was sitting in her adoptive mother's storage cabin, reading her letters, crying into the dusty silence. Claire carefully gathered the letters and returned them to their bundle. She put the photo album back in its box. Everything else she left where it was, too overwhelmed to continue. She locked the cabin behind her and sat in her truck for a long time, engine off, staring at nothing. The sun was lower now, the afternoon fading toward evening. The mountain air had grown colder. This changed everything. Or maybe it changed nothing. She didn't know yet. All she knew was that she couldn't walk away. Not now. Not with Hannah so close and so unreachable at the same time. Claire started the engine and began the long drive home, her mind full of letters and faces and the impossible mathematics of chance and loss. Claire couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Hannah's face in that news article, saw Lily's serious expression, saw the letters bundled and preserved like something precious. By dawn, she'd made a decision. She was going back to the cabin, not to sell it or clear it out, but to understand, to piece together the life her daughter had lived, the connection between Hannah and Louise, the story that had somehow led to Claire holding the key to this particular door. She made coffee, dressed warmly, and was on the road by 7. The drive felt shorter this time, her truck knowing the way, her mind already at the cabin before her body arrived. The morning light made the place look even more forlorn. The sagging roof, the peeling paint. But Claire saw it differently now. This wasn't just a storage shed full of junk. It was a repository of memory, an archive of the family she'd never had. Inside, she worked methodically, Started with the boxes she'd already opened, examining their contents more carefully. The Christmas decorations had names written on them in marker: Hannah, age 7, on a clay ornament shaped like a handprint. Hannah's first apartment on a cheap plastic wreath. Louise had labeled things, kept track of where they'd come from, treated each item like it mattered. Claire found more photos, an entire box of them organized by year. She sat on the dusty floor and went through them slowly, watching Hannah grow up in snapshots. Birthday parties where Hannah blew out candles with the determined expression of someone making important wishes. School photos where her smile got more confident with each passing year. A driver's license photo where she looked terrified and proud at the same time. And in every photo where Louise appeared, there was love. Not the performative kind people put on for cameras, but the real thing. Louise's hand on Hannah's shoulder, steady and reassuring. Louise beaming in the background while Hannah opened Christmas presents. Louise standing slightly to the side at Hannah's wedding, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Louise had been a good mother. Maybe a great one. The evidence was everywhere. In a smaller box, Claire found something that made her throat tighten. A child's sketchbook, the cover worn and bent. She opened it carefully. The first page had a crayon drawing of a house with a tree and a sun with a smiley face. At the bottom, in a child's unsteady handwriting, Lily, age 5. Claire turned the pages slowly. Each one held a drawing. Flowers, animals, people with stick-figure bodies and circular heads. But as the pages progressed, the drawings got more sophisticated. The flowers had details, individual petals and leaves. The animals had distinctive features. A deer with alert ears, a bird mid-flight with careful wing details. By the end of the sketchbook, there was a landscape that showed real talent. Mountains in the distance, trees in the foreground, everything properly proportioned and thoughtfully composed. At the bottom, Lily, age 6. This child, Claire's granddaughter, had been visiting this cabin, had been here with Louise, drawing the mountains that surrounded them. Claire tried to imagine it, Lily sitting on the porch maybe, or at a table inside, Louise nearby offering encouragement. A grandmother and granddaughter, the kind of relationship Claire would never have. She kept searching, found report cards from Lily's kindergarten year. Lily is a thoughtful student who shows particular aptitude in art and observation. She's quiet but engaged and relates well to her peers. Found birthday cards Louise had saved, including one that said, "To Grandma Louise, I love you more than all the stars." Love Lily? Each item was a piece of a life Claire hadn't been part of. Hannah had brought Lily here, to this cabin. They'd spent time with Louise, built memories, created the kind of family bonds that Claire had given up the right to. But there was something else she noticed in the items dated over the past few years. References to Hannah struggling. A note in Louise's handwriting on the back of a photo. Hannah looks so tired. I wish I could do more to help. A calendar from 2 years ago with dates marked for babysitting Lily, multiple times a week, suggesting Hannah was working long hours or needed frequent help. The picture that emerged was of a single mother doing her best, but stretched thin. Of Louise stepping in to help, probably more than Hannah wanted to admit. Of a small family unit holding together through determination and love. And then Louise had died. 2 years ago, according to the death certificate. What had happened to Hannah after that? Who was helping her now? Claire found Louise's address book in a drawer of the old dresser. She opened it carefully, the binding cracked with age. The entries were in Louise's careful handwriting. Names and numbers, some crossed out and updated, evidence of a long life and changing contacts. She found Hannah's entry easily. But the last known address was crossed out with a notation, moved, call for forwarding, a phone number, but it had been written over, suggesting it had changed too. Louise had been trying to keep track, but hadn't finished updating everything before she died. Claire pulled out her phone and tried the number anyway. It rang 4 times, then went to a generic voicemail. She hung up without leaving a message. What would she even say? She spent the rest of the day going through the cabin, box by box. Found Louise's journal in a wooden chest under a window. The entries were sporadic, not daily but occasional, moments Louise had felt compelled to record. Many of them were about Hannah. Hannah called today. She's worried about making ends meet with the hospital bills. I told her not to worry, that I'd help, but she's so stubborn. Gets that from me, I suppose. And later, watched Lily this afternoon while Hannah worked a double shift. That child is so bright. Asked me about clouds and whether they get lonely. How do you answer a question like that? I did my best. One entry made Claire's hands shake. Hannah asked about her birth mother today. First time in years. Said she's been thinking about her since Lily was born. Wondering if she's still alive, what her life is like. I didn't know what to tell her. I've always believed I did the right thing, keeping them apart. But looking at Hannah now, seeing how she wonders, I'm not so sure anymore. The entry was dated 4 years ago, around the time Lily was born. Hannah had been thinking about Claire, wondering, maybe even wanting to reach out, but Louise's journal ended abruptly 6 months before her death. The last entry was about Lily learning to ride a bike, Louise running alongside her in the park, both of them laughing when Lily finally got the balance right. Claire closed the journal and held it against her chest. Louise was gone. Hannah didn't know Claire had found this cabin. Lily was 8 years old and growing up fast, asking questions about family and where she came from, just like Hannah had. The sun was setting when Claire finally locked up the cabin again. She sat in her truck, exhausted but wired, her mind racing through possibilities. She could walk away, pretend she'd never found these things, never seen these glimpses into Hannah's life. Go back to her mountain and her solitude and let the past stay buried, or she could try. One more time. 23 years after a door had closed in her face, she could knock again. The question was whether she was brave enough to risk that kind of rejection twice. Claire went back to the cabin the next day, and the day after that. Each time she told herself she was just organizing, just sorting through things to prepare the place for sale. But really she was searching. For what she couldn't quite name. Permission maybe, or absolution, or just more pieces of the story that would tell her what to do. On the third day, she found the box. It was smaller than the others, pushed far back under the eaves where the roof sloped down, nearly hidden behind a stack of old tax records. The wood was dark with age, the lid fitted tight. When Claire pulled it out and saw the label, her breath caught. Louise's personal, "Do not discard," was written across the top in black marker, the letters firm and deliberate. Claire's hands hesitated on the lid. This felt different from the other boxes, more intimate. Like opening this would be crossing a line she couldn't uncross, but she'd already crossed so many lines. What was one more? Inside were letters. Not Hannah's letters to Louise, but letters Louise had written and never sent. The top envelope was addressed to Hannah, dated 1 week before Louise's death. Claire recognized the handwriting from the journal, but shakier now, as if written by someone whose strength was failing. She opened it with careful fingers. "My dearest Hannah," it began. "I'm writing this because there are things I need to say, and I'm running out of time to say them. The doctors tell me it's pneumonia, that I'll recover, but I can feel my body disagreeing with them. I'm 73 years old and I'm tired. If this is the end, there are truths I need you to know. I have loved you since the moment they placed you in my arms. You were 3 days old, so small and perfect, and I knew immediately that you were mine. Not by blood, but by choice, by love. By every sleepless night and every worried moment, and every proud tear I've shed, watching you become the woman you are. But there is something I've done that I'm not proud of. Something I need to confess before I go. When you were 18, your birth mother came looking for you. Her name is Claire Morrow. She drove to our house and knocked on our door, and when you answered, she told you who she was. Do you remember? You were so angry. You told her you wanted nothing to do with her, that I was your real mother. And you closed the door on her. What you don't know is that I was the one who told you to do that. Before she came, I knew she might. I'd received a letter from a private investigator asking if you'd be willing to meet her. I never showed you that letter. Instead, I told you that birth mothers sometimes showed up when children turned 18, looking to soothe their own guilt. I told you that you owed her nothing. I planted the anger in you, Hannah. I made you reject her before she even arrived. I did it because I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid that if you met her, you'd see everything I couldn't give you. All the ways I failed to be the mother you deserved. I was selfish, and I turned you against a woman who might have loved you in her own way. I've regretted it every day since. Especially now, watching you raise Lily alone, seeing how you struggle. Claire gave you up because she thought it was best for you. I kept you from her because I thought it was best for me. We both made choices about your life without asking what you wanted. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm asking you, begging you to do something I should have encouraged years ago. Find Claire. Talk to her. Let her explain why she did what she did. You don't have to forgive her. You don't have to let her into your life, but give her the chance to be heard. Give yourself the chance to decide, with all the information, whether you want her in your life or not. Her last known address and phone number are enclosed. They may be outdated. This information is from 23 years ago. But it's a start. I have loved you with everything I am, Hannah. You are the greatest gift of my life. I hope you can forgive me for this one great failing. And I hope, whatever you decide about Claire, you'll remember that mothers are just people. We do our best, and sometimes our best isn't good enough. But the love is real, even when we get everything else wrong. Forever your mother, Louise. Claire read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Louise had known, had regretted, had wanted to make it right, but died before she could. She looked in the envelope and found what Louise had mentioned. A slip of paper with Claire's information from 23 years ago. The address was for the house Claire had shared with Robert, long since sold. The phone number was disconnected. If Hannah had received this letter, she wouldn't have been able to find Claire anyway. But Hannah had never received it. That much was clear from the other documents in the box. There were legal papers showing that Louise's estate had been handled by a lawyer after her death. The cabin and its contents had been slated to go to Hannah, but there had been complications. Something about back taxes and liens, and the estate had decided to liquidate the property through a charity auction instead. The box with Louise's personal effects had been overlooked, pushed back under the eaves, forgotten in the chaos of estate settlement. Hannah had never seen the letter, never knew that Louise had changed her mind, had wanted Claire and Hannah to connect. Claire sat in the dusty cabin, holding a dead woman's confession, understanding with painful clarity that she and Hannah had been kept apart by fear and misunderstanding, that Louise had been human, had made mistakes, had tried to fix them too late, that none of them, not Claire, not Louise, not Hannah, had been the villains of this story. Just people doing their best with impossible situations. She carefully returned the letter to its envelope, put it back in the box with the other contents, photos of Hannah as a baby, the hospital bracelet from her birth with baby girl Morrow written on it, and a small journal where Louise had recorded Hannah's first words. First steps, all the milestones of early childhood. Louise had kept these things, had preserved Claire's connection to Hannah, even while keeping them apart. It was complicated and sad and strangely beautiful. Claire's phone had a signal here, weak but present. She pulled up the news article about Hannah again, stared at the photo. Hannah was a nurse at Valley Regional Hospital. That was current information, verified and public. She could go there, could find Hannah, could show her Louise's letter and explain everything. Or she could write first, give Hannah the choice to respond or not. The way Louise had tried to do. The question was what Hannah deserved to know, and how. Claire spent the rest of that day carefully photographing every page of Louise's letter with her phone. Then she returned it to the box, sealed everything carefully, and carried the whole thing to her truck. Some things were too important to leave in an abandoned cabin. That evening, back at her own place, Claire sat at her kitchen table with a blank piece of paper and a pen. She'd taught English for 30 years. She knew how to write, how to choose words that communicated clearly. But this was different. This was her daughter. This was possibly her last chance. She started writing. Crossed it out, started again. By midnight, she had something that felt true. Dear Hannah, it read. My name is Claire Morrow, and I'm your birth mother. I know you have no reason to want to hear from me. 23 years ago, you closed a door in my face, and you had every right to. I gave you up when you were 3 days old, and I don't expect forgiveness for that. But I've recently come into possession of information that I believe you should have, regardless of how you feel about me. 6 months ago, I won a charity raffle. The prize was a storage cabin that had belonged to Louise Grant. I didn't know who she was when I won it. I drove up to see what I'd gotten, expecting nothing. What I found was your life, Hannah. Photos and letters and evidence of the woman you became. And in a box labeled for Louise's personal effects, I found a letter she'd written to you before she died. A letter you never received. In it, she explained something I never knew. When I came looking for you at 18, Louise had already told you to reject me. She'd received advance notice and convinced you I wasn't worth knowing. She regretted that decision deeply. Her letter asks you to find me, to give me a chance to explain myself. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I don't expect a relationship or even a response. But you deserve to have your adoptive mother's last words. You deserve to know that she loved you enough to admit her mistakes. And you deserve to decide, with all the facts, whether you want any contact with me. I've enclosed the hospital's contact information and my own. If you want the letter, I'll bring it to you anywhere you choose. If you want nothing to do with me, I'll respect that. I'll mail the letter and disappear from your life again. Either way, I want you to know that giving you up was the hardest thing I've ever done. That I've thought about you every single day for 41 years. That learning you became a nurse, that you're raising a daughter, that you're apparently as stubborn and determined as I am. All of that makes me proud beyond words. You owe me nothing, Hannah, but I owe you the truth. It's yours whenever you're ready for it. Yours, Claire Morrow. She included her phone number, her address, and the approximate location of the cabin. Then she sealed the letter in an envelope, addressed it to Hannah Reeves at Valley Regional Hospital, and set it on her table. Tomorrow she'd mail it. And then she'd wait, again. Claire mailed the letter on a Tuesday morning. Martin watched her from behind the counter at the general store. His weathered face creased with concern. You look like you're sending off something important, he said. Not quite asking, but leaving space for her to answer if she wanted. Maybe, Claire said. Or maybe it'll get thrown away unread. Hard to say, Martin nodded slowly. Well, whatever happens, you did what you could. That counts for something. Claire wasn't sure she agreed, but she appreciated the sentiment. She bought her groceries and drove home, feeling hollowed out. Now came the hardest part, waiting, not knowing if Hannah would even open the letter, let alone respond. The first week passed with excruciating slowness. Claire found herself jumping at every sound, checking her phone constantly, even though she kept it on full volume. She cleaned her cabin top to bottom, reorganized her bookshelves, split enough firewood to last 2 winters. Anything to keep her hands busy and her mind occupied. Martin called on day 5. You doing okay up there? Fine, Claire lied. Right, well, there's a storm coming through tomorrow. Make sure you've got provisions. She did have provisions. She always did. But she drove down to the store anyway, just for something to do, for the brief comfort of human interaction that didn't require explanation. By the second week, Claire had convinced herself the letter had been ignored. Hannah had probably taken one look at the return address and thrown it away. Or maybe she'd read it and decided Claire wasn't worth the trouble. Both options felt equally likely and equally crushing. She went back to the storage cabin on day 10, told herself she was just checking on the property, making sure nothing had been disturbed. Really, she wanted to be close to the evidence of Hannah's life, even if Hannah herself remained unreachable. The cabin looked the same. Nobody had been there. Claire went inside and sat in the old rocking chair, surrounded by boxes and memories that weren't hers. She thought about Louise, who'd raised Hannah from infancy to adulthood, who'd made mistakes but had loved deeply, who'd tried to make things right at the end but had run out of time. Time was a funny thing. You thought you had plenty of it and then you didn't. Louise had learned that too late. Claire was 62, not old exactly, but no longer young. How much time did she have to make things right? How many more years before she ran out of chances? She was still sitting there, lost in thought, when her phone rang. The sound was so unexpected that she fumbled the phone, nearly dropped it. Unknown number. Her heart hammered as she answered. "Hello?" A pause. Then a woman's voice, careful and controlled. "Is this Claire Morrow?" Claire's throat went dry. "Yes, this is Claire. This is Hannah. Hannah Reeves. I got your letter." The world seemed to stop. Claire couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only grip the phone and try to form words. "Hannah, thank you for calling. I didn't know if you would." Another pause. Hannah's voice, when it came again, was steady, but with an edge to it. "I almost didn't. I saw your name on the envelope and I almost threw it away without opening it. But I was having a bad day, and I thought, what's one more thing to deal with? So I read it." Claire waited. "Let Hannah control the pace of this conversation. You said you found a letter from Louise. A letter meant for me. Yes, I have it. I can bring it to you or mail it, whatever you prefer. How do I know this isn't some kind of scam?" The question wasn't hostile, just practical. Hannah was a nurse, used to dealing with reality, with people who sometimes lied. "You don't," Claire said honestly. "But I can prove the cabin exists. I can show you the raffle documentation. And the letter, it's in Louise's handwriting. You'd recognize it." She heard Hannah breathing on the other end of the line. "Making calculations, weighing risks. Louise never mentioned you," Hannah said finally. "In all the years I knew her, she only talked about my birth mother once. Said she'd given me up because she couldn't keep me. That was it. No details, no name, nothing. She was protecting you," Claire said softly, "and protecting herself. I understand that now. The letter you found, what does it say?" Claire hesitated. This felt like something Hannah should read herself, not have summarized over the phone. "It explains things. About when I came looking for you. About why you—" She stopped, not wanting to put blame on Hannah for something that had been orchestrated by Louise. "Why I told you to go away," Hannah finished. Her voice was flat, factual. "I remember that day. I was so angry. Louise had warned me that you might show up, that birth mothers sometimes did that when kids turned 18. She said you were probably looking to make yourself feel better, not because you actually cared. So when you knocked on the door, I already knew what I was going to say." The words hurt, but Claire had expected them to. "I understand. Do you?" Now there was an edge to Hannah's voice. "Do you understand what it was like growing up knowing my mother, my first mother, hadn't wanted me? Do you know how many nights I cried about that? How many times I looked in the mirror and tried to figure out what was so wrong with me that you couldn't keep me?" Claire closed her eyes. "I wanted you. I've always wanted you. Then why—" Hannah's voice cracked. She stopped, and Claire could hear her taking deep breaths, regaining control. When she spoke again, she was calmer. "I'm sorry. This isn't a fair conversation to have over the phone." "No, it's okay. You have every right to be angry." "I'm not angry." Hannah sounded tired. "I'm confused, and I have questions. So many questions. I'll answer anything you want to know." A long silence. "Then my shift ends at 6 tomorrow. There's a diner on Route 12, about halfway between where you are and where I am. The Mountain View Diner. Do you know it? I can find it. Can you meet me there? Tomorrow at 7? Claire's hands were shaking. Yes, I'll be there. Bring the letter. And whatever else you found that you think I should see, I will." Another pause. "I can't promise anything. I don't know how I'm going to feel when I see you. I might walk out after 5 minutes. I understand. Just the fact that you're willing to meet, that's more than I hoped for." "Okay." Hannah's voice softened slightly. "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow." The line went dead. Claire sat in the rocking chair, phone still pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face. Tomorrow. She would see her daughter tomorrow. Not the teenager who'd slammed a door in her face, but the woman Hannah had become. A mother herself now. Someone who'd lived an entire life that Claire had missed. She stayed in the cabin until sunset, organizing her thoughts and her courage. Then she drove home and started preparing. She'd bring Louise's letter, of course. And the box with the baby bracelet and Louise's early journals. The photos of Hannah growing up. The sketchbook Lily had made. Everything that told the story of the family that had existed without her, but that she was now, impossibly, being allowed to glimpse that night. Claire barely slept. She rehearsed what she might say, how she might explain choices made 41 years ago by a frightened teenager. How did you compress a lifetime of regret and love and loss into a conversation over diner coffee? By dawn, she'd given up on rehearsing. She'd just have to trust that the truth, messy and painful as it was, would be enough. Or if not enough, at least honest. She dressed carefully. Nothing too formal, nothing that looked like she was trying too hard. Just clean jeans and a sweater, her grey hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like what she was, a woman in her 60s who'd lived hard and hoped harder. The drive to the diner took an hour and 40 minutes. Claire arrived early, parked, and sat in her truck with the box of Louise's belongings on the passenger seat. Through the diner windows, she could see the lunch crowd thinning out, afternoon settling into evening. At 6:45, a car pulled in. Claire recognized Hannah immediately, even though she'd only seen her in photos. Same dark hair, now touched with a bit of grey at the temples. Same way of holding her shoulders, like she was carrying the weight of the world and refusing to set it down. Hannah got out of her car slowly, looking around. Her eyes landed on Claire's truck, on Claire visible through the windshield. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Claire picked up the box and climbed out. They stood in the parking lot for a long moment, 10 feet apart, neither quite sure how to bridge the distance. Claire saw her own eyes looking back at her from Hannah's face. The same shape, the same color. It was like looking at a version of herself that had lived a completely different life. "Hi," Claire said finally, her voice smaller than she'd intended. "Hi," Hannah replied. She looked at the box in Claire's arms. "Is that—" "Yes, everything I mentioned in the letter. And a few other things I thought you might want to see." Hannah nodded slowly. "Let's go inside." The diner was the kind of place that had probably looked exactly the same for 40 years. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor, a counter with rotating stools. A waitress who'd seen enough of life not to comment on the obvious tension between the two women who chose a corner booth away from the other patrons. "Coffee?" she asked, setting down menus. "Please," Hannah said. "Black." "Same," Claire added. When the waitress left, silence settled over the table. Claire set the box on the seat beside her, her hands fidgeting with the napkin dispenser. Hannah stared at the table, her jaw tight. "I don't know how to do this," Hannah said finally. "I spent all night trying to figure out what I'd say, what I'd ask. And now I'm here and my mind is blank." "We don't have to do it any particular way," Claire said gently. "There's no script for this." Hannah looked up, met Claire's eyes. "You look like me. I mean, I look like you. It's strange. You have your father's chin," Claire said, "and his hands. But yes, mostly—" She stopped, unsure how to finish. "Mostly I look like you." Hannah flexed her fingers on the table. "I used to imagine what you looked like. When I was little, I'd see women in stores or at the park and wonder if they could be you. Made up whole stories about why you'd given me up. Some of them were kind, most of them weren't. The coffee arrived. Both women busied themselves with cream and sugar, grateful for something to do with their hands. Why did you?" Hannah asked quietly. "Give me up?" Claire had known this question was coming, had prepared for it. But sitting here looking at her daughter's face, all the prepared words felt inadequate. "I was 19, she began. "Pregnant, alone, terrified. Your father—" She paused. "His name was Tommy. We'd been dating for 6 months. He was 20, working construction, talking about going back to school. When I told him I was pregnant, he was gone within a week. Just disappeared. I heard later he'd moved to California." Hannah listened without interrupting, her face carefully neutral. "My parents were— They weren't warm people. Religious, strict. When I told them, they said I'd made my bed and I could lie in it alone. They wouldn't help. Wouldn't let me stay in their house. I was working at a grocery store, making minimum wage, living in a room I rented from someone who felt sorry for me. I had no way to raise a child. No support, no resources, no idea how to be a mother." She took a sip of coffee, gathering herself. "The adoption agency told me about Louise and her husband. They'd been trying for years to have a baby and couldn't. They were stable, employed, desperate to be parents. They could give you everything I couldn't. a home. Two parents, security, love, and you? Hannah's voice was barely above a whisper. Could you give me love? Claire's eyes filled. I loved you from the moment I knew you existed. I loved you when I felt you move inside me. I loved you during every second of labor. I loved you when they put you in my arms, and you looked at me with eyes that were too wise for a newborn. And I loved you when I signed the papers that took you away from me. That love never stopped, Hannah. Not for one single day. A tear slid down Hannah's cheek. She wiped it away impatiently. Then why didn't you fight harder? Why didn't you find a way? Because I was 19 and scared, and I believed what everyone told me, that I wasn't enough, that you deserved better. And you did deserve better. You got better. Louise raised you well. You became this amazing person who saves lives and raises a daughter, and her voice broke. I can't regret the choice because it gave you the life you had. I can only regret that I wasn't part of it. Hannah was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Louise was a good mother. She really was. But there was always something missing. This question mark at the center of who I am. I used to ask her about you, and she'd get this look on her face, not angry but closed, like there was a door inside her that I wasn't allowed to open. She was afraid, Claire said. The letter explains it better than I can. She was afraid of losing you. Can I see it? The letter. Claire reached into the box and pulled out the envelope. She handed it across the table, watching as Hannah held it with shaking hands. The envelope was still sealed with the original clasp, Louise's handwriting clear across the front. Hannah stared at it for a long moment. I'm not sure I'm ready. Take your time. You can read it now or take it home. Whatever feels right. Hannah set it on the table between them, like a bridge or a barrier. Claire couldn't tell which. Tell me about your life. After you gave me up, what happened to you? So Claire told her, about working her way through college, putting herself through school while working 2 jobs. About meeting Robert when she was 26, a kind man who knew about Hannah and never judged. About becoming a teacher, finding purpose in shaping young minds. About the years of relative happiness, building a life with Robert, always with that empty space where a daughter should have been. About Robert's sudden death at 54, how it had broken something in Claire that never quite healed. About the failed attempt to find Hannah when she turned 18, the door closing in her face. The way it had confirmed every fear that she'd given up the right to be a mother. About moving to the mountains, choosing solitude over the risk of more loss. Hannah listened to all of it, her expression shifting between understanding and pain. When I closed that door on you, she said slowly, I was so sure I was doing the right thing. Louise had prepared me. She told me exactly what to expect, how to feel. I didn't even think about it. I just did what she told me to do. You were 18, Claire said. You trusted your mother. That's what you should have done. But she lied to me. Hannah's voice hardened. She manipulated me. She knew you were coming, and she poisoned me against you before you ever arrived. She was protecting what she loved. Can you blame her for that? Hannah looked surprised. You're defending her? I'm trying to understand her. She raised my daughter when I couldn't. She loved you. She made mistakes. We all did. But the love was real. Hannah picked up the envelope again, turning it over in her hands. I should read this now, while you're here, in case I have questions. Okay. Hannah carefully opened the envelope and pulled out the letter. Claire watched her daughter's face as she read, saw the emotions flicker across it, confusion, anger, sadness, something that might have been forgiveness. It took several minutes. When Hannah finished, she set the pages down and stared at them silently. She wanted us to find each other, Hannah said finally. At the end, that's what she wanted. Yes, but she never mailed it. Never told me. If you hadn't won that raffle, if you hadn't found the cabin, she stopped. How did this even happen? What are the odds? I don't know. Maybe there aren't odds for something like this. Maybe it's just what was supposed to happen. Hannah looked up, her eyes red but clear. Do you believe in fate? I didn't used to, but sitting here with you now, I don't know what else to call it. They sat in silence for a while, the letter on the table between them like a treaty. Finally, Hannah spoke again. I have a daughter, Lily. She's 8. I know. I found her sketchbook in the cabin. She's talented. Hannah smiled slightly, the first real smile since they'd arrived. She is, draws constantly. Sees things other people miss. Her voice softened. She's the best thing I've ever done. I'd like to meet her, Claire said carefully. Someday, if you'd ever be comfortable with that. But I understand if... She asks about family, Hannah interrupted. Since my divorce, since Louise died, it's been just the two of us. And she asks questions about where she comes from, who she looks like, whether she has other family somewhere. Claire's heart clenched. What do you tell her? I tell her the truth, that it's complicated. That family is more than just blood. But lately, I've been wondering if that's enough. If she deserves more than just me. From what I've seen, you're more than enough. Hannah met her eyes. Maybe, but maybe she deserves the chance to know her grandmother too. Her biological grandmother. If that's something you want. Claire could barely speak around the hope rising in her chest. More than anything, I can't promise how this will go, Hannah warned. I need time to process all of this. And Lily, she's sensitive. If we do this, we have to do it carefully. For her sake, whatever you need. However long it takes. Hannah nodded slowly. Okay, let me think about it. Can I keep the letter? And maybe, is there more in that box? Claire pulled out the other items one by one. The baby bracelet, Louise's early journals, photos of Hannah growing up. Each one brought tears to Hannah's eyes, brought memories flooding back. I didn't know she'd kept all this, Hannah whispered, holding the tiny hospital bracelet. My baby bracelet, from when I was born. She saved it. She saved everything that mattered, Claire said. She loved you completely. So do I. We both just expressed it differently. Hannah gathered the items carefully, placing them back in the box with reverence. Can I take this? I want to go through it properly. When I'm alone and can really think, it's yours. All of it. They sat for another hour talking about smaller things. Hannah's job at the hospital. Lily's school. Claire's cabin in the mountains. The conversation was still careful, still tentative, but some of the walls had started to come down. When they finally stood to leave, Hannah hesitated. Then quickly she stepped forward and hugged Claire. It was brief, awkward, but real. Thank you for finding me, she said. For not giving up. Claire held her daughter for that brief moment, memorizing the feel of it. Thank you for giving me a chance. They walked out to the parking lot together, the evening settling into dusk around them. Before getting in her car, Hannah turned back. I'll call you. Maybe in a few days. We can talk about next steps. I'll be here. Whenever you're ready. Claire watched Hannah drive away, then sat in her truck for a long time, overwhelmed by what had just happened. The door hadn't closed this time. It had opened just a crack, and that crack felt like everything. 3 days passed before Hannah called again. 3 days during which Claire lived on hope and fear in equal measure, jumping at every phone notification, second-guessing every word she'd said at the diner. When the call finally came, it was late afternoon. Claire was splitting wood behind her cabin, trying to burn off nervous energy, when her phone rang. Claire? It's Hannah. Claire set down the axe, wiping sweat from her forehead. Hi, how are you? Good, processing. But good. Hannah paused. I've been going through the box, reading Louise's journals, looking at the photos. It's been emotional, I can imagine. Actually, there's something I need to show you. Something I found when I was going through my own things, looking for, I was trying to find anything else Louise might have left. And I found this envelope in my attic. I'd requested my adoption file years ago when I was pregnant with Lily. I wanted to know my medical history, genetic information, that kind of thing. But I'd never looked at all the documents carefully. Last night I did. Claire's heart started beating faster. What did you find? Can we meet again? Same place tomorrow morning? I know it's short notice, but yes, what time? 10? I'll be there. The next morning, Claire arrived at the diner 15 minutes early. Hannah was already there, sitting in the same corner booth, a manila folder on the table in front of her. She looked like she hadn't slept much. They ordered coffee and waited until the waitress left before speaking. I don't know how to start this conversation, Hannah said. her hands wrapped around her coffee mug like she was trying to draw warmth from it. Just say it. Whatever it is. Hannah pushed the folder across the table. Look at this. Page 7, about halfway down. Claire opened the folder carefully. It was official adoption paperwork, dense with legal language and bureaucratic stamps. She found page 7, scanned down to where Hannah had marked with a yellow sticky note. It was a note from a social worker, dated 41 years ago, about 2 weeks after Hannah's birth. Contacted today by maternal grandmother. Subject expressed interest in raising child within family. Advised that relinquishment papers already signed and adoption proceedings initiated. Maternal grandmother became emotional, stated that birth mother, minor at time of birth, was not aware of family's willingness to provide support. Maternal grandmother provided contact information for follow-up. Note: attempted callback 3 times over subsequent week, no answer. Adoption proceeded as planned. Claire read it twice, 3 times, her brain refusing to process what she was seeing. I don't understand, she said slowly. This says, my mother called the adoption agency. Keep reading, Hannah said quietly. Claire flipped to the next page. Another social worker's note dated a week later. Maternal grandmother appeared at office without appointment. Appeared distraught. Stated that birth mother, subject's daughter, was led to believe family would not provide support for child. Maternal grandmother claims this was miscommunication, that family would like to raise child. Advised that adoption in final stages, prospective parents grant family, already bonded with infant. Maternal grandmother became agitated, requested documentation of her attempts to claim child, provided copies of correspondence. Grandmother departed. Case closed. The words blurred in front of Claire's eyes. Her mother had come to the adoption agency, had tried to take Hannah, had wanted to raise her, but that wasn't possible. Her parents had been clear. When Claire told them she was pregnant, her mother had said, "You've made your choice. Live with it." Her father had refused to even look at her. They'd wanted nothing to do with the baby, unless they hadn't, unless Claire had been 19 and terrified and had heard what she expected to hear, not what was actually said. She looked up at Hannah, who was watching her carefully. I didn't know about this. I swear I had no idea my mother tried to. I believe you, Hannah said. But Claire, it means you might not have needed to give me up. If your parents were willing to help, if they wanted to raise me, they never told me. Claire's voice came out strangled. After I signed the papers, I never saw them again. My mother called once, maybe 6 months later. I hung up on her. I thought she was calling to tell me I'd ruined my life, that she'd been right about me all along. I couldn't handle hearing it. What if she was calling to tell you what she'd tried to do? The possibility hit Claire like a physical blow. All these years, she'd believed her parents had abandoned her, had built her entire understanding of that time around being alone, being without support. What if she'd been wrong? What if her mother had changed her mind, had tried to fix things, and Claire had been too hurt and too young to listen? They died 10 years ago, Hannah said softly. Car accident, both of them at once. I tried to find them when I was 30, thinking maybe they'd want to know they had a granddaughter. That's when I learned they were gone. I never got to ask them about any of this. Claire's hands were shaking. She set the folder down carefully, afraid she might tear it. My parents tried to take you, and the agency said no because the adoption was already in progress. It looks that way, so I gave you up for nothing. I could have kept you. We could have raised you together, my mother and me. The days between Tuesday and Saturday felt both endless and terrifyingly short. Claire found herself alternating between excitement and panic, second-guessing everything, from what she'd wear to whether she should bring a gift at all. On Wednesday, she drove to Martin's store. He'd pulled together a selection of art supplies, sketchbooks, colored pencils, watercolors, and laid them out on the counter for her inspection. The sketchbook is good quality, he said, tapping a leather-bound book. Not the cheap kind that bleeds through. And these pencils, imported, professional grade. Had them in the back for years. Never could sell them in a place like this, but I kept them anyway. Claire picked up the sketchbook, feeling the weight of it, the quality of the paper. It's perfect. But Martin, this is too much. What do I owe you? He waved her off. Consider it a gift. From me to your granddaughter. It's about time something good happened on this mountain. Claire's eyes stung. Thank you. Just promise me one thing, Martin said, his weathered face serious. Whatever happens on Saturday, don't give up. Kids are resilient. They know real from fake. Just be yourself and let her decide. That night, Claire tried to write something to include with the gift. A card, maybe, or a note. But every version felt wrong. Too formal, too casual, too presumptuous. Finally, she settled on something simple. For Lily, who sees the world beautifully. From Claire, Thursday and Friday crawled by. Claire cleaned her cabin compulsively, reorganized her bookshelves, took longer walks than usual. Anything to burn off the nervous energy. She called Hannah once to confirm the time and place, but kept the conversation brief, sensing that Hannah was managing her own anxieties about the meeting. Lily knows we're meeting someone on Saturday, Hannah said. I told her you were a friend of Louise's, someone who knew her grandmother and wanted to meet her. She seemed okay with that. How much does she understand about— Claire paused, unsure how to phrase it. About adoption. About you? Hannah sighed. I've talked to her about it before in simple terms. She knows I was adopted, that I had a birth mother somewhere. But I've never told her you might be findable. As far as she knows, you're just a question mark in our family tree. That's probably wise. Taking it slow? I hope so. I've been second-guessing everything. What if this is too much for her? What if she doesn't understand? What if— Hannah, Claire interrupted gently. She's your daughter. You know her better than anyone. Trust your instincts. My instincts are terrified, Hannah admitted. But I'll be there. We'll figure it out together. Saturday morning arrived grey and cold, threatening rain. Claire dressed carefully in a dark blue sweater and jeans. Nothing fancy, but presentable. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a 62-year-old woman with lines around her eyes and grey hair pulled back in a simple style. Would Lily see a grandmother, or just some stranger her mother insisted on meeting? The drive to Riverside Elementary took 90 minutes. Claire arrived 20 minutes early and sat in the parking lot, watching families stream into the building. Parents with children, grandparents holding little hands, siblings running ahead. Normal family scenes that she'd never been part of. At 5 minutes to 2, she got out of her truck, the wrapped sketchbook under her arm. The school was typical. Painted cinder-block walls, linoleum floors, children's artwork displayed on every available surface. A handwritten sign directed visitors to the gymnasium for the art show. The gym was transformed. Tables lined the walls, each one displaying student artwork organized by grade. Second graders over here, third graders there. Parents and children moved between the displays, pointing and exclaiming. The air smelled like elementary school. That particular combination of paste, paper, and floor wax that probably never changed, no matter the decade. Claire spotted Hannah immediately. She was standing near the third-grade section, wearing jeans and a green sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. And next to her, holding her hand, was Lily. Claire's breath caught. The photo on Hannah's phone hadn't done her justice. Lily was small for 8, with dark curly hair that escaped from a ponytail in wild tendrils. She wore purple leggings and a shirt with a sparkly rainbow on it. And she was looking at the artwork with the serious, focused expression of someone who took art very seriously. Claire walked over slowly, giving Hannah time to see her approaching. When Hannah noticed, she smiled, nervous but genuine, and squeezed Lily's hand. "Lily, sweetie, I want you to meet someone," Hannah said. "This is Claire. She's the friend of Grandma Louise's I told you about." Lily looked up at Claire with dark eyes that were achingly familiar. For a moment, she just stared, taking Claire's measure with that direct, unfiltered gaze children had. Then she smiled just a little. "Hi," Lily said softly. "Hi, Lily," Claire said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Your mom told me you're an artist. I was hoping you could show me your work." Lily's smile widened slightly. She let go of Hannah's hand and moved to the table, pointing at a painting mounted on cardboard. "This is mine. I painted it in class last month." Claire leaned in to look. It was a landscape, mountains in the distance, a forest in the foreground, and a small cabin with smoke coming from the chimney. The colors were bold. The composition surprisingly sophisticated for a third grader. This is beautiful, Claire said honestly. The way you did the perspective on the mountains, that's hard to get right. How did you learn that? Lily shrugged, pleased but shy. I just looked at pictures. And Grandma Louise used to take me to her cabin, and I'd draw there. She said mountains are easier to draw if you spend time really looking at them. Claire's throat tightened. That's very good advice. May I ask what this cabin is? The one in your painting? It's Grandma Louise's. She used to take me there in the summer. We'd sit on the porch and draw together. Lily's voice got quieter. I miss her. I bet you do, Claire said gently. It sounds like she was very special. She was the best. Lily looked up at Claire with sudden intensity. Mom says you knew her. What was she like? Were you friends? The question caught Claire off guard. She glanced at Hannah, who nodded almost imperceptibly. I didn't know her well, Claire said carefully. But I can tell she loved you very much. Anyone who taught you to see the world the way you do must have been pretty wonderful. Lily considered this, then seemed to accept it. She pointed to another painting. This one is different. It's called The Missing Piece. Claire moved to look at it. The painting showed a house with windows, each window containing a simple stick figure. But one window was empty except for a large question mark. Can you tell me about it? Claire asked. It's about people who aren't there, Lily explained. Like some families have lots of people, grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles. But some families have empty spots where people should be. So I painted it to show that. The symbolism was heartbreaking in its simplicity. Claire knelt down so she was at Lily's eye level. That's a very thoughtful painting. Do you have empty spots in your family? Lily nodded seriously. Mom and I are just us two. We had Grandma Louise, but she died. And my dad lives far away and doesn't visit much, so yeah. Empty spots. Hannah moved closer, putting a hand on Lily's shoulder. But we have each other, right, baby? And that's pretty special. Yeah, Lily agreed. Then she looked at Claire with that direct gaze again. Do you have kids? The question hung in the air. Claire felt Hannah tense beside her. This was it. The moment where they either told the truth or continued the careful fiction. I do, Claire said softly. I have a daughter. She's grown up now, of course. But I love her very much. Where is she? Lily asked. She's actually closer than you might think, Claire said, her eyes finding Hannah's. In fact, she's right here. Lily looked confused. She glanced at Hannah, then back at Claire. I don't understand. Hannah knelt down next to Lily. Baby, remember how I told you I was adopted? That I had a birth mother who couldn't keep me when I was a baby? Lily nodded slowly. Well, Claire is that person. She's my birth mother, which means... Hannah paused, letting Lily work it out. The understanding dawned slowly on Lily's face. Which means she's my grandma? Like my real grandma? Yes, Hannah said. If that's okay with you. Lily looked at Claire for a long moment. Then, with the straightforward logic of childhood, she asked, Where have you been? Claire felt tears threatening but held them back. I was lost for a very long time, but I'm here now, and I'd really like to get to know you, if you'd like to get to know me. Lily processed this with the seriousness she seemed to bring to everything. Do you like art? I love art. Do you live near us? I live in the mountains. About an hour and a half away. Do you have cats or dogs? No pets right now, but I see deer and foxes and sometimes bears near my cabin. Lily's eyes widened. Bears? Sometimes. From a distance. They mostly keep to themselves. That's cool, Lily thought for another moment. Okay, you can be my grandma, but I have to think of a name for you. What should I call you? Claire looked at Hannah, who was crying silently, and then back at Lily. Whatever you want to call me is fine. You decide. I'll think about it, Lily said decisively. Then she noticed the wrapped package under Claire's arm. Is that for someone? Actually, it's for you, Claire said, handing it over. I heard you were an artist, so I brought you something. Lily carefully unwrapped the package, taking her time with the paper like it mattered. When she saw the leather-bound sketchbook and the set of professional colored pencils, her whole face lit up. These are really nice, she breathed, running her fingers over the smooth leather. Mom, look at this paper. It's so thick. Those are professional quality, Hannah said, looking at Claire with gratitude in her eyes. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Claire said simply. Lily opened the sketchbook to the first blank page, then looked up at Claire with those serious dark eyes. "You have kind eyes? Like someone who wouldn't lie?" The observation was so unexpected, so direct, that Claire felt her chest tighten. "I try not to." "Okay, then you can really be my grandma." Lily said it matter-of-factly, as if she'd been conducting an evaluation and Claire had passed. "But I'm going to call you Grandma Claire, because Grandma Louise will always be Grandma Louise, even though she's not here anymore. Is that okay?" Claire had to swallow hard before she could speak. "That's more than okay. That's perfect. Good." Lily looked back at her artwork on display. "Want to see my other paintings? I have 3 more over there." She took Claire's hand without hesitation, that simple gesture of trust that children gave so freely when they decided you were safe. Claire's fingers closed around Lily's small hand, and something inside her that had been frozen for 41 years began to thaw. They spent the next 20 minutes looking at artwork. Lily explained each piece with the seriousness of a curator. This one was about seasons changing. That one was inspired by a book she'd read. Another one was just because she liked the color blue. She asked Claire questions too. Did she draw? Did she paint? What did she like to look at? Claire answered honestly. She wasn't an artist herself, but she'd always loved the mountains, loved the way light changed throughout the day, loved watching storms roll in across the peaks. Lily listened with complete attention, nodding thoughtfully. "You should come visit my mom and me," Lily said suddenly. "We live in an apartment now, but it's okay. We have a balcony where I can draw sometimes. You could see it." Claire looked at Hannah, who was standing nearby, watching the interaction with emotions flickering across her face. Joy, grief, hope, fear, all tangled together. "I'd love to visit," Claire said carefully. "Whenever your mom thinks is a good time. How about next weekend?" Hannah said, her voice thick. "Saturday afternoon. We could have dinner. Nothing fancy, just family." The word hung in the air between them. Family. "I'd love that," Claire said. They spent another half-hour at the art show. Other families came and went, admiring their children's work, taking photos. Claire watched Hannah with Lily, saw the easy affection between them, the way Hannah anticipated Lily's needs without being asked. She was a good mother, a great one. Everything Louise had trained her to be, everything Claire had hoped for when she'd signed those papers 41 years ago, but there was also loneliness there. Claire saw it in the way Hannah's eyes followed other families with multiple generations, saw it in how tightly she held onto Lily's hand whenever the crowds got thick. She'd been doing this alone for 2 years now, since Louise died. Raising a child, working full-time, managing everything by herself. Claire wanted to tell her she didn't have to be alone anymore, that she was here now, ready to help however she could. But it felt too soon for promises like that. Better to show it through actions, through showing up, through being the kind of grandmother Lily needed, and the kind of mother Hannah had deserved all along. As the art show wound down and families started leaving, Lily yawned widely. Hannah smiled and ruffled her daughter's curls. "Someone's getting tired," she said. "We should probably head home." Lily nodded but didn't let go of the sketchbook. "Can I draw in this tonight?" "Of course, baby." They walked out to the parking lot together. Lily was talking about what she wanted to draw first. Maybe the mountains Claire had described, maybe a bear, maybe just patterns and colors. Hannah and Claire walked behind her, close enough to talk quietly. "Thank you," Hannah said, "for being so good with her, for not pushing." "She's remarkable," Claire said. "You've done an amazing job with her. Some days I'm not sure. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping it together." Hannah's voice dropped. "Especially since Louise died. She was my backup, my support system. Without her—" She stopped, shook her head. "Sorry, I don't mean to dump all this on you. You're not dumping anything. You're being honest. That's what family does." Hannah's eyes glistened. "Is that what we are now? Family?" "I hope so," Claire said softly. "If you'll have me." They reached Hannah's car. Lily climbed into the back seat, still clutching her new sketchbook. Hannah turned to Claire, and this time when she hugged her it was longer, tighter, with less hesitation. "Saturday," Hannah said. "Come at 4. We'll eat at 5. Nothing fancy, I can't really cook, but we'll figure it out. "I'll be there," Claire promised. She watched them drive away, Lily waving from the back window until they turned the corner and disappeared from view. Then Claire stood in the empty parking lot for a long moment, feeling the weight of what had just happened settle over her. She had a family. After 41 years of absence, she had a daughter who was willing to let her back in, and a granddaughter who decided she was worthy of trust. It was more than she'd ever hoped for, more than she'd ever dreamed possible. The week before Saturday passed differently than the anxious wait before the art show. This time Claire had something solid, Lily's hand in hers, Hannah calling it family, an invitation that felt like belonging. She decided to bring ingredients for her late husband's chili recipe. Robert always said it was the one thing he could cook that people asked for seconds of. If Hannah couldn't cook well, maybe they could cook together. Saturday arrived clear and cold. Claire packed the groceries with the recipe card in Robert's handwriting. She added a photo album, pictures of herself and Robert, her teaching years, pieces of the life Hannah had never seen. Claire knocked on Hannah's apartment door at exactly 4 o'clock. Lily answered, paint smudges on her hands. "Grandma Claire! You came!" The name said so naturally made Claire's heart skip. "Of course. I promised. Come in. I want to show you what I drew." Lily grabbed Claire's hand. The apartment was small but homey. Lily's artwork covered the refrigerator. A bookshelf overflowed with medical textbooks and children's books. Hannah emerged from the kitchen. "I was trying to figure out dinner. I have chicken, but I'm not sure what to do with it." Claire held up the grocery bag. "I brought ingredients for chili. My late husband's recipe. We could make it together." Relief flooded Hannah's face. "That would be amazing. I'm hopeless in the kitchen. Then we'll learn together. Lily can help too." They filled the small kitchen space together. Claire showed Lily how to tear lettuce, how to measure spices. Hannah watched, learning alongside her daughter. The conversation flowed easily. School stories, work stories, mountain stories. While the chili simmered, Hannah leaned against the counter. "This feels strange," she said quietly. "Strange but good. 6 weeks ago I was alone on my mountain," Claire said. "Now I'm here cooking dinner with my daughter and granddaughter." "Louise would have loved this," Hannah said, her voice thick. "She wanted us to find each other. Maybe she knows somehow," Claire said softly. They set the table together. Claire said a simple grace, something she hadn't done in years, and they served the chili. "This is really good," Hannah said. Robert knew what he was doing. He was a good man. "I wish you could have met him. Tell me about him," Hannah said. "Tell me about your life." Claire talked about meeting Robert, their marriage, his encouragement when she became a teacher. She showed them the photo album, pointing out pictures and telling stories. Lily studied each photo carefully. "Is this your house? Did you have a dog? What did you teach?" Each answer added another piece to who Claire was. After dinner, Lily brought out the sketchbook. "I drew something for you." The drawing showed 3 figures standing in front of mountains. At the bottom, "My new family." Claire's vision blurred. "This is beautiful, Lily. May I keep it?" "It's for you," Lily said. "So you don't forget us." "I could never forget you," Claire said, pulling Lily into a hug. "Never." Hannah joined them, the 3 tangled together. 3 generations finally connected. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Claire and Hannah sat on the couch with tea. "I want you to be part of her life," Hannah said. "Not just occasional visits, really part of it. School events, holidays, regular weekends, more than anything," Claire said. "These past 2 years since Louise died, I've felt like I'm drowning. Working full-time, raising Lily alone. I'm tired, Claire. Having you here, it's like I can finally breathe." Claire took Hannah's hand. "Then let me help. However you need. I'm here now." Hannah's eyes filled. "I spent so many years being angry at you. Louise convinced me you'd abandon me without caring. Then I became a mother, and I understood how hard it must have been. I should have tried to find you. We can't change the past," Claire said gently. "We can only build from here." "Then let's build something good," Hannah said. "Something Louise would be proud of." They sat in comfortable silence. Finally, Claire stood to leave. "Same time next week?" Hannah asked at the door. "Same time next week," Claire confirmed. And if you need anything, you call me. I will. Hannah hugged her tightly. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for letting me in. She drove home through the dark mountain roads, her heart fuller than it had been in decades. The cabin that had seemed like a curse had turned into a blessing. The raffle ticket she'd bought on impulse had led her home. The daughter she'd given up had found her way back, bringing with her a granddaughter who called her Grandma Claire without hesitation. Some losses did heal. Some doors did reopen. Some families did find their way back together against all odds, and despite all the years in between, Claire believed that now. 3 months passed like water flowing downhill, steady, natural, inevitable. Winter settled into the mountains with the kind of cold that made everything sharp and clear. And with each passing week, the shape of Claire's life changed in ways both small and profound. The Saturday dinners became routine, sometimes at Hannah's apartment, sometimes at Claire's cabin when the roads were clear. Lily would bring her sketchbook and fill pages while the adults talked. Hannah would help Claire with household projects, fixing that persistent roof leak, organizing the shed, splitting wood for the fireplace. They worked side by side, finding a rhythm that felt earned rather than forced. Lily's anxiety about abandonment, which Hannah said had been constant since the divorce and Louise's death, began to ease. She stopped asking if people were going to leave, started sleeping through the night without nightmares. Her teacher called Hannah to say that Lily seemed more confident in class, more willing to participate. She talks about you, Hannah told Claire one evening. About her Grandma Claire, who lives in the mountains and sees bears. You're real to her now, part of her story. That matters more than you know. The storage cabin, Louise's old place, was nearly finished with repairs. Claire had decided to keep it as a family retreat, somewhere they could all visit when they needed space or quiet. She'd found a contractor who worked slowly but well, replacing the roof and windows, shoring up the foundation. By spring, it would be ready. One Saturday in late January, Lily arrived at Claire's cabin with big news. She climbed out of Hannah's car, clutching a folder, her face glowing with excitement. Grandma Claire, I got chosen for the district art show. Claire pulled her into a hug. That's wonderful. Which piece did they select? My new family, the one I drew for you. My teacher submitted it, and it got picked. Lily was practically bouncing. It's going to be displayed at the community center for a whole month. Claire looked over Lily's head at Hannah, who was smiling with pride and something else. Contentment, maybe. Or peace. Inside, they made hot chocolate and looked at the official notification letter together. The art show would be in April, open to the public, with awards given for different categories. Lily's piece was one of 30 selected from over 200 submissions across 3 counties. Will you come to the opening? Lily asked Claire. It's on a Saturday. We could all go together. I wouldn't miss it for anything, Claire promised. That afternoon, while Lily drew at the kitchen table, Claire and Hannah sat by the fireplace, watching snow begin to fall outside the window. Hannah had brought work with her, patient files she needed to review, but she'd set them aside, choosing conversation over duty. I've been thinking about something, Hannah said. About the future. About us. Claire waited, letting Hannah find her words. Lily's been asking about next summer. About whether we could stay at the cabin, the one we're fixing up, for a week. Just the 3 of us. She wants to draw the mountains up close, spend real time there instead of just day visits. I think that's a wonderful idea. The thing is, Hannah continued, I've also been thinking about what comes after that. After next summer, after the year after that. About what it means to have family again, to not be doing everything alone. She paused. My lease is up in August, and I've been wondering, what if we moved closer? Not into your place or anything like that, but closer. Same town, maybe. So Lily could see you more, so we'd be more than an hour and a half apart. Claire's heart skipped. Are you serious? I've already looked into it. There are nursing positions at the hospital in Pine Ridge. It's 20 minutes from here. Good school district for Lily, lower cost of living than where we are now. Hannah met Claire's eyes. I'm not doing it just for you. I'm doing it because the past 3 months have shown me what it's like to have support, to have family, and I don't want to give that up. Hannah, Claire's voice broke. That would mean everything. Then I'm going to apply. Put out feelers. See what's available. If it works out, we could be here by fall. Close enough for regular dinners, for Lily to take the bus to your place after school if I'm working late. Close enough to actually be a family instead of just visiting one. They sat in companionable silence, watching the snow fall and Lily draw, the fire crackling softly. Claire thought about the storage cabin, about how winning a raffle she barely remembered entering had led to this, to her daughter planning a future that included her, to a granddaughter who called her Grandma Claire without hesitation, to Saturday afternoons that felt like coming home. Louise would approve, Claire said quietly. She wanted this for us. For all of us. I know, Hannah said. I've been reading her journals, the ones you found. She wrote about regret, about wishing she'd done things differently. But she also wrote about love, about how much she loved me, how much she wanted me to be happy. Hannah's voice got thick. I think this would make her happy. Knowing we found each other, knowing we're building something together. Lily looked up from her drawing. Are you guys talking about me? Always, Hannah said, smiling. We're always talking about you. Good, Lily said decisively. Because I have a question. When we move closer to Grandma Claire's, can I have a dog? Because Grandma Claire has land and dogs need space, and I would take really good care of it. Hannah and Claire looked at each other and laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from joy rather than humor, from recognizing the absurdity and beauty of ordinary family moments. We'll see, Hannah said. The eternal parent response. That means maybe, Lily translated wisely. She went back to her drawing, satisfied. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the mountain in fresh white. Inside, 3 generations of women shared space and warmth, and the kind of peace that comes from finally being where you belong. Claire watched them, her daughter, her granddaughter, and thought about the 23 years she'd spent alone. About the losses that had shaped her, the grief that had defined her, the isolation she'd chosen because hope hurt too much. But some losses did heal. Some wounds did close. Some doors, once shut, found their way open again. The rusty key from that raffle letter sat on Claire's mantel now, a reminder of where this had started. A $5 gamble on a storage cabin nobody wanted. A reluctant drive up a mountain road. A door opening onto dust and memories, and unexpectedly, impossibly, a second chance. Claire had won more than a cabin that day. She'd won her way back to the family she'd thought was lost forever. And in doing so, she'd found her way back to herself, the woman she'd been before grief had hollowed her out, before loss had taught her to expect nothing. She was 62 years old. There was still time to be the grandmother Lily needed. Time to support Hannah through single parenthood. Time to build traditions and create memories and prove that family wasn't just about blood or history, but about choosing to show up day after day and do the work of loving each other. The snow fell. The fire burned. Lily drew pictures of the life she imagined they'd build together. And Claire, for the first time in longer than she could remember, felt something she'd stopped believing in. She felt hope. And it didn't hurt at all.